Welcome to another episode of the Adultish Podcast. You can like, listen, comment, share, and subscribe to Adultish on most streaming platforms. You can also find Adultish on Twitter at AdultishP0DCAST. Everyone to a brand spanking new episode of the Adultish Podcast. As always, it's your host, Afiya, and I'm joined tonight by my lovely co-host, Mr. Vincent Bernard. Say hello to the world, Vincent.
Hello, beautiful people. How art thou?
We art grand.
Lovely, lovely, lovely.
Oh, man. I'm so damn silly. I don't know what it is about like Shakespearean and like old speech, and that's why I just call it old speech. But
they called it modern English.
Modern English. I love it so, and I find myself like interjecting it into my everyday vernacular.
You're
if
right.
You will.
You're right.
And it makes me, again, bringing me back to me being like an old lady. It makes me seem like a 500-year-old wench or something.
Right.
Because I say things like, it shall be. It's like, who says shall anymore?
My favorite thing to say is shan't.
Ooh, shan't.
Oh, I love shan't. Because it's just so like, it's just so, I don't know. I don't even know what it is. It's just so.
Know. It just has like this regal, it just sounds, it's like an air of pompous. But like, right. I'm allowed to be pompous air to it.
Right, exactly.
Like I'm shitting on you and your shitty words.
Exactly.
I shan't.
You shan't escape. One of my favorite Portishead songs. This song called All Mine, and there was a part where she says, "You shan't escape." And every time I hear it, I have to sing it with her because it's just so perfect.
It is. It's so sexy. The other day, I was pretending to be Juliet on my balcony. It was so dumb.
That's not dumb. It's actually interesting. You have a great balcony for it.
Yes. It was like, so I had this dude coming over and he was like, look out for me. And so I'm on the balcony just like waiting for him. And then I see him walking up the street and I just see him walking. I was like, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo? And then I'm like, hark. Who goes there?
Kudos to homeboy if he actually knew the follow-up line to your Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo?
Who goes there? And then he was like, how art thou? And I was like, look at us being stupid.
I know.
Silly. But I love that kind of language.
So do I.
And speaking of silliness and language, we're going to talk go a little riff about these comedians these days.
Yes, God, yes. Yes.
So here is a what is it called? A preface.
Yes.
To this podcast. So all I've heard. Rewind. Dave Chappelle released a new stand-up on the Netflix.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of people upset. I believe the new show is called Sticks and Stones.
Sticks and Stones, yes.
And I have not watched it,
Neither
nor
have
has
I.
Vincent.
Yes.
Neither of us have watched
Yes.
it. Neither, however, which way
I prefer neither.
I prefer neither. It's so English.
Yes.
Neither of us have watched it, and yet it's getting so much critical, not acclaim, but criticism.
Yes.
So much criticism.
Right.
I will read here's just a few headlines.
Mm-hmm.
The Wall Street Journal writes, Dave Chappelle is stuck in the 80s. Another place said, has Dave Chappelle finally gone too far? I need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Another person says, Dave Chappelle skewers cancel culture, Jussie Smollett in Netflix comedy special. And let's find. Let me just find one more. Let's find another good headline.
Right. Because see, what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about comedians and what they can and can't joke about, but then we're gonna watch it and come back to it.
So it says the Chicago Tribune. Dave Chappelle pushes the same boundaries that once got Lenny Bruce arrested.
That's actually a good comparison because Lenny Bruce is
hella
celebrated.
Racist.
Well, yeah,
yes,
that part.
And yes,
but he's also
celebrated.
Right, he's
now,
good for that.
So the reason, perfect, as you say, Lenny Bruce. So the reason why I brought this topic up is a friend of mine who's like big in comedy, well, not big in the comedy world, but he's a huge comedy buff, loves comedy, writes it, etc. Made me listen to Lenny Bruce one night. We were drunk. He was like, listen to this shit because like. Listen to it and see if it'll make you laugh.
Right.
Period.
Right.
And so he made me listen to Lenny Bruce. And I listened to a couple skits, a couple jokes, a couple specials or whatever. He had me listen to the album. And it was like, I didn't not laugh because it was mean or racist.
Right.
I did not laugh. No, I didn't laugh, sorry. Because it just wasn't funny.
Right.
There's a difference to me when like you are able to take racist, misogynistic things, whatever, and make it funny. Now, of course, there's a double-edged sword. There lies, therein lies the rub. How do you make something that is supposed to be so mean and so terrible, comedic or funny?
Right.
And that's, I think, the fine line that people feel, I guess, Dave Chappelle rides in this special.
Right.
Now, as Vincent mentioned, we do intend on watching this special. And then coming back and recording our real feels about it.
Right. And, you finish your thought, and I'll chime in.
And recording our real feels about it.
Yes.
But I think right now we're doing a little preamble. Is that
preamble, preface,
a little
anything that's before
yes. On basically our take, I guess, on how we as adults can take certain types of humor.
Right, amen. And we can even look back to his other two Netflix specials.
Yes.
And which in the past he had gotten under the skin of some people when he made trans jokes.
Yes.
And so to start the ball.
Get the ball rolling, darling.
It's interesting because and I don't know how to say this and it come out the right way and not be offensive to anyone, but Dave Chappelle's last specials I watched, one of them was and there was another one that was really hilarious.
Okay.
I don't remember the titles of which one I liked and which I didn't. But the ones that I didn't find funny, it was mainly because he just wasn't joking. He was mainly talking about what it means to be a wealthy comedian living where he lives.
Right.
That to me isn't funny because I can't relate to that.
No one can relate to that.
Yeah. And it's like, even if I can't relate to your humor, if you still are funny, then I'll laugh. Whereas the second one, I felt like he was actually cracking jokes.
He was telling jokes.
He was telling jokes. Like, there's this one joke where he was he was talking about some girl. I know. He was talking about some like girl like giving him head or whatever, and the girl like takes his dick out and says, "Come all over my face," and like just the way he said it and the way he did the facial is like that was funny. It's cute, it's lewd, but it's funny.
Yes.
Then he said these trans jokes. Now, as a gay man, I have nothing but respect for my trans brothers and sisters, and in the LGBT community, there's more of a conversation about the fact that trans rights and trans issues have nothing to do with sexuality, is more gender. However, there's still others, so they're part of the community. But when Dave Chappelle made those jokes, I had spoken to some friends of mine who were trans, and most of them weren't offended. But what I am noticing, a friend of mine that I work with, she's Bosnian. And when she first came to this country, she moved to Detroit. So you have a Bosnian family escaping a civil war, and they are coming to black-ass Detroit and is living in the hood with black people. So she saw that special when they were filming it, and she loved it. And one thing she said to me that kind of put it into perspective was this way. She told me her story, and she said, now, when you're a Bosnian child escaping violence, and then you come to America and you're living in a measure of poverty because, you know, you're poor and you're an immigrant and you're living around black people. She said, you know, black people really enveloped them with love and a sense of community, but she was also able to see the hierarchy and how black people were treated as second class citizens. And she talked about getting older and understanding white privilege, and how even though she looks white, the moment they find out she's an immigrant, she also is, you know, treated like a second class citizen.
Right.
And what she said next was so real. She said, and when that is your experience, when you're a black person living in poverty or whatever the situation is, she said, you don't have time to complain about a joke that a comedian is saying on the special. And it just really hit me because, of course, there are layers to that.
Yes,
of course, there
absolutely.
are layers to that. I'm going to say that. Of course. But her saying that really did put a lot of things into perspective, because what I pay attention to is who's doing the complaining.
Right.
Who's doing the complaining? Like, if it's black people complaining about things, most of the time it's usually racially motivated and it's usually using these bullshit stereotypes. And black comedians are better with black humor. Like, Richard Pryor and Chris Rock and them, they'll tell jokes about black people and things that we don't do or do because they are black. If a white person doesn't, they do it in a certain way. It can also be funny. It can also
be funny. Bill Burr does some black humor.
Yes.
As a white man who has a black wife.
Yeah, and he could be problematic sometimes.
But there's some jokes, like I remember this one joke watching it with my ex, one of his specials where he was talking about dating a black woman and like going up to Harlem and like the fear that he felt like as the train kept moving forward and like higher and higher up like, in the city. And I relate to that because as a child growing up, like I was taught to fear, like as you go higher, like larger in the numbers, like you hit that 96th Street,
that's
you
it.
Hit that 110th. Fear comes out of nowhere. So I'm like, if I'm fearing it and he's fearing it, again, as you said, that ability to relate.
Yes.
That's how I was able to relate with some of those black tinted jokes.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah, but it's just, I don't know, like, again, I'm going to see it and I'll be able to talk about it, but the last comedians and what they joke about, it really, I think it depends on how it's done. I think it depends on the delivery.
The delivery,
yeah. And just, it's so.
It's such a, for me, it's like, it really is a double-edged sword, but I'm not even gonna front. Sometimes I don't give a shit. And the reason why I'm going to say I don't give a shit is because, one, the purpose of the comedian is to make a person laugh.
Right.
Like, that's their job. Their purpose is to make you laugh. And in the most basest of basest whatever that you're looking at in comedy, as I told Vincent, or as I say for myself, the base, the crux, the foundation of comedy is parody.
Yes.
And it's satire.
Yes.
Right? Satire, I think, is the birth of comedy because people would satirize things. And then that's how it would become a joke.
Yes.
And as I said this, to the same friend of mine who's like all about comedy, I'll bring it up again. I probably mentioned this once before. Forgive me if I did, but I do remember watching this one special with, not special, it was an episode of a talk show or like a morning news show or some shit like that. And Felicia Rashad was on it. I think they were doing something about the Cosbys. It might have been like an anniversary special or whatever.
Right.
And so the person was asking Felicia, like, how did she get into comedy, blah, blah, blah. Or at the very least, how did she come to be on this show, but et cetera, et cetera. And she spoke about how, like, when she was in school and she was doing drama, you know, she was going to school for acting or whatnot, or she was in college, she had this professor who asked the students in the room to tell them, I think they were doing Shakespeare or something like that. And the professor asked, which did they like more? Did they like drama or did they like the comedies?
Yes.
Or which was better? And Felicia said that she responded that she thought drama was better. And the instructor looked at her, and I'm paraphrasing what she said, but you can find this interview on YouTube. the instructor said, I find that funny that you would say you like drama. And he was like, explain. And she's like, oh, well, drama, you feel with the heart and the acting and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he responded something to her like he found it funny that she would like drama with her being as intellectual as she was.
Right.
And she said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, drama appeals to emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Comedy appeals to wit.
Yeah.
And
interesting.
For me,